Big political and community decisions will be made in just 2 days. Ahead on Face the State, the May primary election is upon us. You'll be selecting who you want to represent your party in the November election. Franklin County Board of Elections Director Antone White joins me with what you need to know and how elections officials work to make sure the vote is accurate, fair, and secure. A state representative just introduced the Medical Aid in Dying Act. He calls it a compassionate end-of-life option for Ohio adults facing a terminal illness. I talked in depth with Representative Eric Sinnenberg about why he's sponsoring the bill, the safeguards in it, and the chances of it becoming law. And the fate of tens of thousands of Haitian immigrants in Ohio is now in the hands of the U.S. Supreme Court. Justices heard arguments for and against allowing them to stay in the U.S. under temporary protected status. The two sides of the debate. Face the State starts now. Thanks for joining us for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. The May primary is this Tuesday. Voters are deciding who will face off in the November general election in races including Senate, Congress, governor, state legislature, and more. Also, local issues on the ballots, such as school levies. Early voting has been going on for 4 weeks now, leading up to Tuesday's election. If you want to cast an early ballot in person, you can still do that today. I'll have the hours in a minute. This primary, Ohioans can vote on one of 4 ballots: Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or issues only. So far, more than 250,000 Ohioans have voted either in person or by absentee ballot. That's according to the Secretary of State's office. And keep in mind, roughly 8 million Ohioans are registered to vote. And if you're voting by absentee ballot, that ballot has to be in by 7:30 on election night or it won't be counted. That's new this year. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. So it's likely too late to put it in the mail. You might want to take it to your County Board of Elections office yourself. And you can still go to your County Board of Elections office today from 1 to 5 p.m. to vote early in person. There's no voting tomorrow, so election officials and workers can prepare for the big day Tuesday. Then on Tuesday, local polling locations will be open from 6:30 in the morning until 7:30 at night. And you know, Franklin County alone has 298 voting locations. When you go to vote, you'll need one of these forms of acceptable ID: an Ohio driver's license, state of Ohio ID card, U.S. passport, U.S. military ID, or Veterans Affairs ID. And for more information, you can go to voteohio.gov. Joining me now is Franklin County Board of Elections Director Antone White to talk about the preparations and the process to make sure the election is accurate, fair, and secure. Antone, thank you for being here today.
Good morning, Doug.
Appreciate you so much. Let's talk about the big thing this year. That is the change in the law for absentee ballots. What do you want people to know about that situation, considering we're just 2 days out from the election?
Sure. So the state legislature changed the law this year. So now your absentee ballot by mail must be received by your County Board of Election by the close of polls, 7:30 p.m. on Tuesday. And that's a change. Previously, you had a 4-day grace period for your ballot to be returned to the Board of Elections. Now it must be in our hands by Tuesday at 7:30.
And we're hearing that with the mail service, it's a 3 to 4 day turnaround, or 2 to 3 days at minimum. So basically, are you telling people if they still have them in their hands now, they should bring them in?
They should bring them up to the Board of Elections. USPS usually, they tell you about 5 days, 5 to 7 business days. So if you're still holding on to it, and if you have the ability, bring it to your County Board of Election.
Do they have to bring it themselves, or can they have somebody else bring it for them?
An immediate family member by law is allowed to bring a family member's absentee ballot. And when they come to the office, they'll have to sign an attestation form indicating that they're returning it on behalf of a family member, but an immediate family member can bring that ballot to the office.
So I've been out to see you a couple times through early voting this year over the last 4 weeks. How would you characterize voter turnout on the early voting side so far?
Yeah, so far it's picking up. The last couple of weeks it's picked up. This is what we expect for a primary election. So in a primary election, this is when you choose candidates within your political party to go on to the general election. So it's a little lower turnout. It's what we expected. It's getting a lot busier, though.
It seems like it's been steady.
It's been very steady.
Like never a line, so per se, but steady flow.
No, we have a good staff at the Franklin County Board of Elections. We vote people very quickly. So when you vote if you want to come up this Sunday today, it's from 1 to 5. You may see a bit of a line because from 1 to 5, people like to line up early, but we have plenty of equipment, plenty of staff. We'll vote you very quickly.
And what do you expect then for Tuesday as far as turnout?
Tuesday, it's hard to tell. Typically in primary elections, you see anywhere from a 20 to 25% turnout. Okay. We always hope it's higher, but that's what you typically see historically in primary elections.
It's interesting you say you hope it's higher because obviously I believe that you think it's important for people to get out and vote in a primary in every election. So why do you think primaries are important to get out and cast a ballot?
Well, I mean, it's an opportunity for you, if you want to affiliate yourself with a party, to do so through the primary process. That's how it operates in Ohio. It's a little different than other states. You declare your party affiliation through the primary process. As you indicated earlier, you have 3 primary ballot choices for Democrat, Republican, Libertarian. If you don't want to affiliate yourself with a party, you can always ask for an issues-only ballot, and you can vote issues only if there are issues available in your precinct.
So I guess, are Ohio elections secure?
They are very secure. What makes Ohio different than a lot of states is we operate in a very bipartisan manner. So every step of the election process is handled by members of an opposite party, whether that's tabulating ballots, transporting ballots. We store equipment in rooms that require bipartisan teams to go in together with different sets of keys. We have cameras in our buildings, and so we secure things through chain of custody. So everything we do is very secure. We handle things in a bipartisan manner. We logic and accuracy test every piece of equipment before it goes out on election day to ensure that it's working properly. And all that equipment has been federally certified. It's been certified by the state of Ohio. So many steps in place.
Is that testing going on now, or is that already completed?
We've completed our testing. And we've started to deliver our equipment. So we're ready to go for Election Day.
Can machines be hacked?
They cannot be hacked. They're not connected to the internet. They function on their own. The ballot markers we use in Franklin County, I like to call them a big electronic pencil. It records your ballot on a skinny paper ballot. Then you place that ballot into a ballot box or a tabulator at the polling location, and it's a paper trail, right? So that paper ballot you put in your ballot box, that's a paper ballot. It's a backup. It's a way to verify that you voted.
And then on election night, basically the results are always unofficial, right? Until you can do the post-election audit?
Correct. So they're unofficial until we do what was called the official canvass, where we ensure that every check-in matches up with every ballot that was cast, and then we certify the election, and that becomes the official result. Then after we certify and have an official result, we conduct post-election audits. We take a minimum of 5% of the ballots cast in the election in several different races, and we do a hand count. We hand count the paper ballot I just talked about. We compare that to what was tabulated, and that's how we get to, in the state of Ohio, Secretary LaRose likes to say 99.98% accuracy, right?
Basically 100%.
Basically 100%.
Nothing might ever be perfect, but we hear a lot these days about eligible voters or voter fraud. What is in place to make sure that only registered voters in Ohio can vote and that people who are not citizens can vote?
Sure. So on the citizen front, so when we register somebody to vote, we register them. That record is sent to the state of Ohio, to the Secretary of State's office. They conduct those checks on citizenship. And so every record is checked by the Secretary of State. When we register somebody to vote, we maintain that record. That record is so when you go to vote on Election Day, your record's in our poll book. And so we ask every voter to state their name and address, and then we compare that to what's in our poll book. If it's not, or if there's a discrepancy, we can vote a provisional ballot. That's the process where we check your registration against what you've told us to ensure its accuracy.
And then when people come to the polls on Election Day, whether it's early or on Tuesday, they have to have one of those valid forms of ID.
They need to have one of the valid forms of ID you discussed earlier, but the important part is it needs to be unexpired. And so that's the key. So take a look at your license today, and if your license has expired, your state of Ohio ID has expired.
Renew it tomorrow.
Renew it tomorrow so that you're ready to go on Election Day. If you come with an unexpired ID, you would vote a provisional ballot, and then we would verify that after the election. You would need to come to the Board of Elections up to 4 days after the election to show us an unexpired ID. That way we can count your ballot.
Director White, thank you so much. A lot of good
Doug.
information today. I think we're getting people ready for the big day on
Appreciate
Tuesday.
it. Yeah, go vote.
All right.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming in. Well, and remember to stay with 10 TV on election night for up-to-the-minute results, analysis, and live reports from around the state. We're having a special election streaming show called Ohio Votes from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on 10 TV Plus. You can download 10 TV Plus on your TV and watch for free. Also, we'll have full coverage of the primary election results coming up on 10 TV News at 11 and 10tv.com on Tuesday night. Coming up next on Face the State.
Mentally competent adults who are terminally ill should have the option to end their lives with dignity and to not have to suffer. We treat our pets.
State Representative Eric Sonnenberg just introduced the Ohio Medical Aid in Dying Act, why he says it's a compassionate end-of-life option, plus the safeguards in place and its chances of becoming law. Should terminally ill people have the right, the option to end their lives and their suffering if they choose? A state representative just introduced legislation to legalize medical aid in dying in Ohio, or the MAID Act. It would allow certain terminally ill, mentally competent adults to choose to end their life by a doctor prescribing a lethal dose of a drug. State Representative Eric Sonnenberg says the legislation aims to provide compassionate end-of-life options for Ohioans facing terminal illness. One advocate says this option would have helped his wife.
She had said her goodbyes to her family and friends, but dreaded what was to come. She wished for a way to end her suffering on her terms, sparing herself the pain and her family the trauma of watching her slowly fade away. She did not have that option.
The legislation includes safeguards, such as waiting periods, mental health evaluations, and the patient must be evaluated by at least 2 doctors. Representative Sonnenberg says medical aid in dying is already legal in 13 states and the District of Columbia. Earlier, I talked with him in depth about what the bill would do, why he introduced it, and the chances of it passing and becoming law. So, Representative Sonnenberg, why do you feel people should have this end-of-life option?
The end of our lives should be, ideally, they're pain-free. And ideally, most people probably want to pass away in their sleep one night when they're very old and where it's a painless death. But unfortunately, that's not the reality. And the reality is that there are people who face the worst parts of their lives at end of life in terms of diseases and illnesses and sicknesses that are just horrendous to go through for the individual patient as well as their family. And if we can avoid that worst part of life, especially when it's end of life, and we know that the individual is going to be dying at some very near point, we should, I believe, allow them the option to be able to avoid that and to have their death come sooner.
So how did this issue come to your attention to prompt you to put it into legislation?
So this is actually not the first time this bill's been introduced in the Ohio legislature. 8 years ago, it was introduced in the Senate. And the group that is advocating, one of the groups for this option and for this law, is the Ohio End of Life Options. they've waited 8 years because they knew that over the last 8 years, it really wasn't the appropriate time to have this discussion again in the state of Ohio. But since that time, other states have added this and allowed it, and we now have 13 states plus Washington, D.C. that allows for medical aid in dying, and there's 14 other states now that are considering the bill. So, 108 million Americans currently have this as an option, and I don't know the exact total, but I assume with 14 more states, it's probably another 100 million that live in states where their legislatures are debating this. So the movement has grown, and the group Ohio End of Life Options, many of them live near me in Northeast Ohio. They had a bill last year that they were looking at related to this, but not this bill, and that's how I became introduced to that group. And this year, when the Cleveland.com, the plain dealer, started a series of articles about this issue, along with the fact that these other states have joined and legalized, they felt that the time was now for us to have this debate again in the State House. And I was very glad to be asked and to be willing to be the sponsor of this bill.
So what are the safeguards in the bill to make sure that this couldn't possibly be abused?
Sure. Well, first of all, in every other state that has already legalized this, which is now up to 14 states, 13 plus Washington, D.C., and this has been going on in some states like Oregon, which was the first state to legalize this for a long period of time, well over 20 years, that I know of, and if somebody disagrees or can challenge me on this, they're more than welcome to, but that I know of and I've heard, there hasn't been one case of abuse or coercion that's been used in this situation. So not once has a family member or a doctor who's been involved said, "Oops, we made a mistake." The individual actually did not want to use medical aid in dying. They were coerced into it. Not at all. So we don't have any evidence of that being the case. And the safeguards specifically in place are the fact that the patient has to be mentally competent, and two separate physicians need to agree that they're mentally competent, as well as to agree that they're terminally ill and have less than 6 months to live, and it's an irreversible disease or illness that the individual has. And they have to make two separate oral requests to take the medicine that will cause their death. They need to be 5 days apart from each other, and also they eventually have to do a written consent form. And then lastly, the patient is the one who administers the drugs themselves, whether that's through an IV or orally. It's the patient who does this. So they're making the decision, and they're actually the ones doing it. And we believe those are appropriate safeguards in place.
We talked to Governor DeWine this past week and asked him about this specific legislation, and he said to our reporter that he is in favor of life and worries when legislation like this is introduced. He says he'll look at the language on this, but thinks people should have a pretty good idea of where he will come down on this. That being said, how do you feel about the bill's chances of ultimately getting through the legislature and becoming law?
Well, this bill, it respects life. One of the proponents who was at our press conference last week, who lives in Columbus, Michael Orr, he specifically said he loves his life. He plays pickleball 3 times a week. He has a great life, and he wants his life to be healthy and to continue much into the future, as long as he can. But he also knows that he's been diagnosed with cancer. It could come back, and once it hits that point where it is terminal, and he knows that the end is near and the end is not going to be enjoyable, he wants the option, as do others, to end their lives with dignity and to not have to suffer, and for their family members to watch them suffer. So I, first of all, don't necessarily agree that one who is pro-life has to be opposed to this bill. As far as the chances of it passing, we know that it may be an uphill battle, that it might take several attempts in the General Assembly to get this passed. It will take a lot of advocating and lobbying from advocates. But we do believe that if Ohioans listen to their constituents, and the public polling data does suggest that it's about 75% that agree that this should be an option that exists, that this should become law eventually.
But this is a very sensitive subject, of course, for a lot of people. And so are you anticipating, or have you already had pushback in that regard about the sanctity of life and letting it play out as it should, I suppose?
Yeah, there's been some pushback. I would say overwhelmingly, though, as far as people who have contacted my office, those who I've seen. I mean, it just happened to me in a parking lot just now because this has gotten some media attention. Those who I've seen publicly who know about this have said, I agree. Although it should be used, it should be available and an option in limited circumstances.
The bill now has a number. It is House Bill 835. It has not yet been assigned to a committee for hearings. That will likely happen when the House comes back into session after the election. Still ahead on Face the State, Governor Mike DeWine went back to school to shine a light on reading, who his latest Science of Reading champions are. The U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments Wednesday on whether the Trump administration can end temporary protected status for Haitian immigrants. It's a story we've been following very closely. Justices heard arguments over the Trump administration's push to end temporary protected status, or TPS, for immigrants from Haiti and Syria. The ruling could impact 30,000 Haitians living in central Ohio under TPS, many of them in Springfield. During arguments, some justices questioned whether the policy was motivated by bias, while other justices suggested the president has broad authority to end the program. Last month, I talked to an advocate for the Haitian community, as well as to Ohio Senator Bernie Moreno about this hearing. Here's some of what they said.
I can't support, and I think lots of people can't support, deporting people who came here legally, are benefiting our economy, and whose lives are at risk if they're sent back to Haiti. So I think it's a great change in momentum. I think it sends a very strong signal, but it's not the ultimate answer.
Temporary protected status is temporary. It's been extended way too often. As you know, in the campaign, I was extremely clear that this was going to expire this year and that people needed to make plans accordingly. The reality is we are about to have a workforce shock in America because of AI. And we have to be extremely careful about immigration, especially low-skilled workers.
A Supreme Court decision is expected sometime this summer. Governor Mike DeWine has often said reading well is the key to success in school and in life. He spent an afternoon at an Upper Arlington school to shine a light on its reading success. Greensview Elementary School was named as one of the governor's Science of Reading champions this year. The Science of Reading is a method that uses phonics to build vocabulary by having students sound out words. It's been a big push for Governor DeWine. In 2023, he launched the Read Ohio initiative to raise literary achievement across the state.
The child is being taught in a different way than the science of reading. That means that child very well could be left behind and could impact that child for their entire lifetime. Children only have one opportunity to grow up, just one time. And we gotta get it right and do everything that we can to make sure that they have every chance to read well. Reading is the key to success in school, but it's also the key really to success in life.
Greensview is one of 12 schools in central Ohio to be recognized as a Science of Reading champion this year. And finally, another reminder to stay with 10 TV on election night for up-to-the-minute results, analysis, and live reports from around the state. Join us for Ohio Votes from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on 10 TV Plus. You can download 10 TV Plus on your TV and watch for free. Thank you for joining me this week for Face the State. I'm Doug Petcash. I'll see you back here next Sunday to recap the election. Once again, that's at 11:30 a.m. Have a great day.